The Grimace era was fun while it lasted. The Mets went 7-0 when Grimace appeared out of nowhere for his birthday, but all good things come to an end. The Mets lose to the Rangers on Wednesday, but take 2 out of 3 and are right back in the thick of the things at one game back in the wild card. I'll talk all about it with Giraffe Neck Marc. That's Mark Luino, the co-host of the Mets Up podcast. And of course, you can find him on YouTube. We got a lot to do. Grimace, the Mets win streak, and a whole lot more. It's coming up next on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Mets Magic with Jake Brown.
And it's in there, strike three called. The Mets win the pennant. The New York Mets have won the National League pennant. Put it in the books. The New York Mets, for the first time in 15 years, are champions of the National League.
The sickest New York Mets podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome back to the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm your host, Jake Brown. At Jake Brown Radio is where you find me on Twitter, X, Instagram. And subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Radio. Subscribe to the show's YouTube at the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. And follow us on X at Sick Pod Mets. And subscribe wherever you get podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating, write a nice review. If you're watching us on YouTube, smash that thumbs up button right now. Do us a favor. Smash that thumbs up. Share it with your friends. Comment below. How you feeling about the Mets? Mark Luino is going to join me in a minute. Giraffe Neck Marc. You can subscribe to his YouTube and check out the Mets Up podcast he does with our friend James Schiano. Now, let me say this. Let me get this off my chest here to start off the show. Obviously, the Mets' 7-game win streak was not all because of a revolting purple blob. We know that. Sal Licata, you're my guy. You got to have some fun with it. People on Twitter, stop with Grimace. It's a fun story. The Mets are a laughing stock every year. We have fun with them. People laugh at us. We laugh at them. We all laugh together. But it's part of why we love this franchise. What other franchise do you know has a McDonald's mascot turn the season around, has a rally dildo behind the locker of a player that most Mets fans never heard of, in TJ Rivera, has a manager put the lineup out of order and they bat out of order, has a player threaten to beat up a reporter? This only happens in Queens. So if you want to hate on Grimace, you want to hate on that story, touch some grass. Of course, the team turned it around at the right time, and playing a lousy Marlins team to start off helps that. Playing a Padres team coming across the country, maybe that was a little banged up. Manny Machado was not even running to first base. Sure, that helped. Sure, guys starting to hit in the warm weather helped. Obviously. No shit, Sherlock. But for a franchise that is just always one of the laughing stocks of the league, for a franchise that we were talking about, when I had Wardy on a few weeks ago, we were talking about a total rebuild. For them to turn it around, you know what? I will credit some of Grimace, because sometimes you need some furry figure to show up at the ballpark, and maybe that gets the boys rolling. And it did. And while the team is still 3 games under 500, they're 1 game out. And I know it's ridiculous. Believe me, it's insanity to be 1 game out of the playoffs when you're 3 games under 500. But that's been the story in the National League wildcard. It's a lot of sub 500 baseball, and maybe 500, 81, 82, 83 wins will get you in the playoffs. And if that's the case, the Mets are in the race. And that's what we were hoping for. When David Stearns said, we want to be a competitive ball club, we want to, be in the picture. They're in the picture. They're in the graphic. And that's what we want. And if the Grimace story, could be, you don't have to put it to bed, but we don't have to say, if the Mets win Friday in Chicago, 8-1 since Grimace. It was fun because it was a win streak. The win streak is over. Now you're back to the regularly scheduled program. But if you can't enjoy 1 week of a ridiculous story like that in a 162 game season, you're bothered by it. Please drink some pink lemonade. Have a Mets coffee mug. Buy a Mets hoodie on homage. Shout out to them. Very cozy. You're probably saying, Jake, you sweat in t-shirts. I do have the AC on. That's why I can control myself in a hoodie right now, because if the AC was off, I would not be wearing this hoodie. Let's bring in my guest now after I had to get some grimacing of myself off my chest. Giraffe Neck Marc. Subscribe to his YouTube at Giraffe Neck Marc. Mark Luino, friend of mine, fellow historian. We've had many good nights out. Mark, welcome to the program. Welcome to the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. You've been on Amazing But True, but you've never been part of Mets Magic, which a few weeks ago I was saying we need to change it to Mets Tragic, but the Magic has come back to life, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, happy to make my debut over here on Mets Magic and talk about this hot streak. Like you said, they just even a week ago, it was like, wow, this season's over. What are we going to do? And now you're like, well, a game out of the playoffs, game out of the postseason. Maybe we got a shot. Maybe we got a chance at this thing.
And you really felt that when you come back from London after the miraculous win and you lose the first game of the Marlins. You're like, I thought the Luis Torrens legacy moment was going to carry over. I thought having Francisco Alvarez back at the team would carry over. But it didn't for a game, and then it did. Now, and then Grimace appears 53rd birthday. Where are you in the Grimace saga? And then I'll put this to rest. Now that they lost, I think we can put it to rest, but I want to get your Grimace take.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I'm so down. Like you mentioned, like the rally dildo, and we had Donnie Stevenson in the past. We had the parakeet.
Forgot about Donnie Stevenson.
The parakeet with Cespedes. Like, this team just weirdly finds weird mascots to spark rallies all the time. So I'm about it. And if that is the stupid, dumb reason that the Mets ended up playing some good baseball, I am more than happy to promote McDonald's for free like we have for the last week or so. I mean, the marketing that McDonald's got from it's chef's kiss. It's beautiful. This is all free. This is all organic. I think it's probably going to be laid to rest now. Like you said, once the win streak ends, I think the story is no longer cute and fun anymore. Now it can get to that point where people are allowed to be annoyed. All right, enough of Grimace, enough of this and that. But during the time, I mean, that was a Linsanity run, and New Yorkers just got to appreciate that.
I love Linsanity. That was one of the best months of our lives. I mean, and they made the miraculous team. Unfortunately, that team didn't end up doing anything, but this is a lot shorter. Linsanity was what, 6 weeks? I think it was a 6-week stretch.
Yeah, it was a little bit longer, but like that initial week where he hit the game winner against the Raptors, he had that big game against the Lakers. It was like, oh my God, this is never going to end.
Yeah, the Laker game will always live in infamy. But yeah, and Donnie Steven, perfect example. Like, this fake character that they created. He wasn't a fuzzy figure, but he had a mustache, and he was ridiculous, and it sparked something. And everyone was joking, hey, this guy's better than their actual hitting coach. So, maybe Grimace is the spark plug that they needed. And, another spark plug, at least in the locker room, and I think it's pretty clear, is a guy like Jose Iglesias, who finally gets to play yesterday. I know he didn't do anything, only gets 2 at-bats, but McNeil plays a week straight. Maybe he's coming around a little bit. I mean, he had a couple hits in there, but bringing a veteran into that clubhouse, and maybe the negative aura that Jorge Lopez brought, I don't know if that's true or not, but he goes. Iglesias the next day, that Thursday against the Diamondbacks, they start winning right on that day. They play his exclusive that I'm looking for online. OMG you find online is Usher's. Oh my gosh. Now, I want to hear Candelita's OMG. I want to say hotnewhiphop.com, Candelita. And we haven't got it yet. And guys like that and presences like that are can help turn a clubhouse around without even touching the field. And and you're hearing it. The locker room's blaring OMG, and they got what's the thing they do?
Slap the ass.
Well, that's one.
Yeah.
The ass slap is funny because Brandon Nimmo is a man of the Lord.
He is a child of God.
He almost doesn't want to do it. He's just like, we're Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader's made it rain a few times where he goes poo, poo, and Marche's like poo. Like, some of them, the emphasis, like Lindor's got the good, like, but Brandon Nimmo almost doesn't want to do it. Pete Alonso doesn't look like he should be doing it. You could tell which guys have made it rain at Scores, at Rivieras, at Wonderland, and which guys haven't. And Brandon Nimmo has not made it rain. So but it's those things. It's that, and they do it out to the bullpen, which is a sign of, hey, you guys are included too into this party. And it's the personalities that help turn the season around, and not just, the revolting purple blob.
Yeah, no, I mean, the vibes are just so much better ever since whether it's Jorge Lopez being gone, whether it was the player meeting that they had after that game, whether it's the fact that Francisco Alvarez is back and the Mets seemingly don't lose games when he plays. Whatever is going on in Queens and Flushing with the Mets, it's all good stuff. Like, all the vibes are exactly where they should be. And as weird as it sounds, this is now the team that we have exactly expected this year, around 500, fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, that team 11 games under was bizarre. We were so like,
weird.
Who are these guys? And because they're all better than that. You look at their back of their baseball cards, like Brandon Nimmo's not 210 hitter. Now Brandon Nimmo's turned it around. He's up to 240. I know a lot of people don't look at average, but his OBP now up to 355 as well. And average is important when you're hitting where he's hitting, and he's starting to hit now. He's hitting homers. Maybe it took going to Texas. Someone joked about, maybe going to a state that has similar beliefs to his, maybe turned his bat around. But Brandon Nimmo's hitting. Lindor has been hitting now for a few weeks. Pete Alonso turning it on, and I think that's important whether you keep him or trade him, because, if you do end up trading him, his value is starting to rise now, where maybe a team that needs a first baseman, cough, Houston Astros, now they have to get back in it, and that's going to be intriguing because the Mets play them next weekend. So Houston will get a little scouting report in Queens. But that talk, we have it to the side now, because now we're like, can the Mets be buyers, Mark? Can the Mets go from team 2 weeks ago, like I said, I was talking with the Warrior about, does this team need a full rebuild, to now, can the Mets keep everyone and maybe get bullpen help? Because listen, I still don't trust Drew Smith, and he gives up a homer on a fastball right down the middle last night. Do they get bullpen help? Do they get a bat? Our shift, despite them being under 500, has changed from, all right, let's send these rentals packing, to let's ride these boys and get them some help.
You got to look at what David Stearns has done in the past. And I know the Brewers are a much different organization, especially financially, than what the Mets have. But I think they're going to do a little bit of both. I think there's probably no way that a guy like Luis Severino realistically makes it past the trade deadline on the New York Mets. Pete Alonso's the tough one. He's the interesting one. Him and JD. I think Pete more so because of the ties and the connection with the team in the city. But those are the two guys where you move them, it's going to be hard for Mets fans to probably want to go to games after the trade deadline. It's going to be hard to sell tickets. It's going to be hard to convince the fans that this was the right move, especially if they stay close in the wild card race like they are. But I think guys like Severino, I think even a Minaya, I think a lot of the expendable contracts that aren't necessarily stalwarts of this team that are technically replaceable, I think the Mets are going to look to move those guys. A guy like Severino is going to have so much value at the trade deadline. It feels stupid not to. And I know this isn't what Mets fans want to hear, but we're not winning the World Series with this team. It's going to take a miraculous run. So you're not going to hemorrhage the future for a miracle. That being said, I think they do have ability to buy. I don't think it'll be in the bullpen because David Stearns just doesn't buy bullpen arms. He's not a guy who's going to spend money on the bullpen like that. But I think that if you're looking at guys with more controllable contracts, guys who have 2-3 years left maybe with some control, I think that's where the Mets can be really aggressive and start to use some of those minor league players that have been boosting their stock all season long to maybe improve this team for 2025 for the cheap.
Yeah, and some of those have been hurt. Jet Williams, I believe, is out for the year, correct?
Yeah, Jet's not playing this year. It's going to be a lost year. But I don't even think he would be necessarily a guy to be looking to move. More so that range of the Jonah Tongs of the world, or the younger guys that have been playing well in the low and high A right now. I think those would be more of the guys, because Jet is a premier prospect in baseball, and I know his size is a little bit different than what you expect from a premier player, but the Mets are super high on him. I would be shocked if they look to move him. Maybe they look to move in Acuna even. I don't know. They have a lot of pieces right now, which puts them in such an interesting scenario for the trade deadline. And I think we're going to learn a lot about what the David Stearns tenure and era is going to look like based on what happens this trade deadline.
Yeah, Acuna is a guy, when we talk about Jeff McNeil's struggles, he's the guy we look at. All right, second base, boom, put him right in there. before the year for me, it was Ronnie Mauricio. If he didn't get hurt, I think Ronnie Mauricio would be playing almost every day on this team.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Vientos, Mauricio, maybe Alonso's there. Like it's a whole different feel. I feel like McNeil, despite even the win streak, he didn't do anything really. He had besides the hit in London, the 9th inning single. And when we talk about McNeil and a big hit, it's always a single. It's never a double, it's never a home, it's never a triple, it's never he stole a bag. He's made a couple good defensive plays. I don't know if I'd call them web gems, but the couple solid defensive plays. But that's what he is. Like, I think in Acuna's hitting right now too, even playing Iglesias more, in my opinion. Like, I know Iglesias was hitting mostly against lefties and he faced really only lefties. He hasn't faced a right-hand hitter yet. But I think the spark and the veteran leadership and his glove, like he's a guy that can change the game with a big defensive play that I don't look at Jeff McNeil as that guy. So, like, when is this cord going to be pulled from Jeff McNeil, if ever? Because when we talk about the future of the Mets, you know, you talk about eating a lot of money if you have to do it, but I just cannot see a future Mets with Jeff McNeil on it in 2025.
It feels less and less likely as the days go on. He's just not playing well. There's also this weird thing going on where he hits 300 on the road, and I think he's hitting like 170 at home this year. So he's struggling to hit as a whole. Like, I wouldn't pretend like he's having a good season by any means, but at least on the road, he's been okay, where at home, he's been abhorrent. He's been terrible. So I think the Mets probably will look to move McNeil this deadline if there's any takers. I think the big thing, like you mentioned, is going to be that money. I think a lot of teams are going to have a hard time paying Jeff McNeil $10 to $15 million because I think he actually goes up in pay over the next couple seasons as well, which makes it even harder to move that contract. It sucks because when McNeil was on, I mean, he changed this offense. He was a guy who was hitting 300. He was getting on base at like a 350, 360 clip. He was able to hit 10, 12 home runs a season, and we're just not seeing that. The one thing I will say with Jeff, and if there was ever like a devil's advocate here, he's a friend of mine. He's got that injury that I feel like everyone forgot about, where like his elbow technically I think could use Tommy John on his non-throwing arm, and we saw something happen with Bryce Harper. We saw this happen with who wasn't on the Yankees? Dominguez got the surgery. Didi Gregorius had this injury at one point. Corey Seager. Power and ability to hit does go when this injury happens. It does affect your play. Now, that being said, if it is affecting his play, go get the surgery. Go get the surgery. Your money's guaranteed. Go get paid. So if it's that big of an issue, go get paid. But at the same time, he's performing pretty terribly right now. And it is hard to say that we should keep running him out there every single day. Now, I don't think Iglesias or Acuna right now are the fix or the stopgap, but I think ride the hot hand. Like if Jose Iglesias is hot, play him. If Jeff McNeil's hot, play him. If they both stink and Luis Angel Acuna starts to really do some damage down in AAA, call him up and play him too. Let's figure out what we've got. But right now, that is a bit of a hole on this team at second base. I mean, they're even trying Brett Beatty down in AAA at second base. They're trying to find an answer.
Jose Iglesias, I know, is a small sample size, was hitting 435. Like before,
yeah, but it's like, it's
like
like fake 435.
But still, he was hitting the ball and then he didn't play the whole week. I mean, he went the whole week with it, even against the lefty. I was like, all right, Iglesias day today. It was McNeil again, and I get they're trying to get his mojo and confidence back, but like, you got to win baseball games here, and I think you got to put. Well, yeah, they did, but that's because of Grimace, of course. Grimace won them. But even in that game, he didn't do anything. Like he was like 0 for 4. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to see the guys who are providing a spark play, and like every game is important. And you're going to see in the standings, like if it stays like this, hey, if the Mets miss the playoffs by a game, you're like, oh, what about this game, this game, this game? Yeah. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. And I get it. You got to, he's got to turn his stock around. If you're going to trade him, he's got to show something, because right now he's maybe a low A prospect, and you're going to eat. He's got $31 million over 2 years. You probably have to eat $15 million of that. You're going to eat one of the seasons, which they're hoping to get back if Justin Verlander's out long enough with this injury. With the vesting option, I think he's going to end up pitching too many innings for the Mets. It'd be a hell of a savings, because when you ate that money, everyone looked at the prospects they got like, they're Epler a genius. They're a genius for doing this. In the end, you're still eating whatever it was, $15-18 million. Yeah. So they could use some financial help there.
Oh, yeah, no, the Mets could definitely use some financial help, especially with what's going to, be next offseason. But that's a long ways away. That's I can't even worry about that right now. I'm still so focused on like what's going on. Like we got the Cubs this weekend. That's a huge series.
Yeah, what do you think about this series? Because the Cubs here, we're tied with the Cubs right now. So like you said, it's a massive series. We have the Chicago Classic Friday 2:20 p.m. start, a Saturday 2:20 start, Sunday 7:10, which lines up perfectly for me to go to Summer Club during the day and enjoy Purple Disco Machine. Come on through if you want, Mark. But I feel like I ask you like every week, hey, you
got
want
a
to come to
bachelor
Summer
party
Club?
this weekend. Otherwise, I'd have to take you up.
You're always somewhere. You're always like Jersey, bachelor party in another state. But yeah, that helps my summer schedule. But yeah, the Cubs, interesting team. A team also I feel like underperforming. I think on paper the Cubs are a much better team than 36 and 39. But what do you think of this series? How do you think it ends up playing out?
Yeah, this is a huge series. It's if you're a Mets fan, like you got to be tuned in. I personally love the early starts, especially I'll be at a bachelor party, so like I'll be on the golf course, I'll be watching a little Mets baseball, having a couple beers. It'll be nice. It's gonna be good vibes. It'll be even better if they keep playing and hitting like they have. I feel like Pete Alonso always plays really well in Wrigley. I don't know why. I think that might be anecdotal, but I feel like I remember him hitting a lot of home runs there, and just. It's cool, too, because the Mets and Cubs were like kind of an old school-ish rivalry back in the day with only the two divisions. Like the Mets and the Cubs would battle every once in a while. So it's nice that these games will actually matter more than they have in the past. But this Cubs team is not playing great baseball, like you mentioned. I think they're 5-5 in their last 10, and they just won 2 in a row from the Giants. So like Dansby Swanson up until this point has had a pretty horrible year. Last 2 games gotten hot. Ian Happ's been pretty bad. They've been underwhelming on the offensive side. It's really been their starting pitching that has completely saved this season at all because their bullpen is terrible. Their lineup hasn't hit. But then you've got Shota Imanaga. You've got Mike, as they call him now. Jamison Tyone's been great. We're going to see Javier Assad, who's been money. This starting pitching has been a revelation for them. It's seriously saved the season because they've got 3-4 guys deep right now who've got like a 3 or below ERA.
Yeah, and Imanaga they'll face Friday, 7-1, 1.89 ERA against Jose Quintana, who has not been good this year. He's come around. His last start was great. Now he's got to keep it up because you want to talk about guys traded. You mentioned Manaea. Now Manaea is an interesting case because he is a player option next year. And the way he's pitching, you would think he's going to get a decent contract where he'll get a multi-year deal and decline that player option. You know, I would love him to be part of the Mets rotation next year. Remember, the Mets need arms. Like they have Christian Scott, essentially, most likely. They'll have Senga, assuming he's healthy. And then we'll talk about the same old guys, Peterson, McGill, but I don't know if they want them as full-time rotation members. Peterson's been solid since coming back. McGill's, developing the new pitch. He's been solid. He's looked actually pretty decent. So they're getting, you want to talk about good starting pitching. The Mets starting pitching has been pretty solid. They just haven't ate enough innings up. Luis Severino's been good. Luis Severino's been a guy that will get you into the 6. Even when he imploded the other day, still got through 7. Yeah. Like
that was huge.
He will get, he'll save the bullpen, and you need that because at some point you're not going to have days off. I know this month they've oddly had some days off, but in the past they've dealt with 18 games in 17 days with the doubleheaders. Now the weather is cooperating a little bit, and they're playing a fairly normal schedule with days off, which helps. But these guys get taxed. Like Reed Garrett will be taxed by the All-Star break. Reed Garrett, we saw it happen with Jeff Brigham. I mean, his arm fell off, and then he was hurt. So they're going to have to be smart with these guys, and they need that strong starting pitching. But Jose Quintana is a guy here who's performing for the Mets, but also has to perform for other suitors because, like you said with Severino, everyone needs pitching. Not everyone needs a Pete Alonso, first baseman, second baseman. They might have their guy, even a DH, but everyone needs pitching. So Jose Quintana has got to turn around. This was the Mets opening day starter this year. They were expecting, Yeah, I mean, they were expecting he's a walking quality start. That's been his career, around 3.54 ERA. He'll give you 6 innings, and that's all you can really ask for, 6 innings, 3 runs. But he's got to do that consistently here because it's still a bit of a ways away until Senga's back. Until he makes a rehab start, I'm not ready to say, he'll be back July 20th or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, once that Senga injury news came around, me and James on the podcast were like, we're going to wait. Because I know everyone's like, oh, May, June. We're like, it's gonna be around July. It's gonna be around the All-Star break, maybe even after it. There's no reason to rush him, especially with how his contract changes, with how many innings he throws. But in terms of Quintana, I mean, he's pretty terrible. Like this year, he's been pretty awful. The only 2 good starts he's made have been against the stupid teams in baseball, which was the Padres and the Cardinals, who basically use pen and paper still and no analytics whatsoever. But if he can convince a team, if he could fool a team into trading for him, I mean, I'd take like a really like good washing machine or a good bag of balls. Like if we can move him for anything, that would be huge. He's not a player that you want to keep around. There's no reason to. He's, like you said, he's a quality start guy. That's kind of his ceiling, and that's kind of why I never really wanted him on the team, is because at the best you're hoping he keeps you in the game. He doesn't win you games. If we can convince a team that he can win you a game, he can be a part of that rotation that can push you into the playoffs, I'd be happy to move him. I honestly don't think the Mets get any worse if they trade him. Like, if let's say the Mets are one game out of the wild card or in the wild card, I don't think moving Jose Quintana even makes a change for them whatsoever this year.
Yeah, and I think Senga's timeline is going to affect a lot of decisions, and that's why a lot of these decisions are going to come right around the deadline day. Yep. Because they can't just trade Severino and Quintana and still not have Senga back. You can, but we're going to have to watch Joey Lucchesi, who is basically the same thing as Quintana.
Jose Budo.
Give him 3 rounds. We'll see Budo. That's fine, but you still need another arm. And it's, if you're in the race, you don't want to just trade guys. And then if there are 2-3 out on trade deadline day and deal 2 starters, you don't want to just punt it. You know how mad Mets fans are mad. Some Mets fans were mad last year, and they were pretty much out of it. Yeah. But if you're 3 out, and despite the record, say you're 4 games under, but you're only 3 games out on July 31st, if you ship out a bunch of these pieces, like you said, not only people won't show up, they're going to be furious because they're going to say, why didn't we go for it? This was a year where the wild card teams were not that good. If you could have made a few moves. Instead, you got prospects for these contracts that who knows if they pan out. We've seen so many Mets prospects not pan out. I mean, look at Brett Beatty right now, a guy who I said last week, he's the only battery not used for anything. He's a 4A battery. That's what he is. Not AA, not triple. He's 4A. He crushes it every time AAA comes here. He just can't get it right. He gets a little better defensively, still not great, but he cannot hit consistently. So if you're a couple out, and again, we're not going to go crazy on the deadline here, but it's been the talk of this season. You cannot just quit, Mark, because more people are going to be more furious this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what is going to be hard for Mets fans to understand is I don't think trading Severino is going to be the toughest one, I think, for people to swallow, but like trading a Quintana, like that's not quitting. You'll be able to find his production from Joey Lucchesi. Joey Lucchesi is going to give you Jose Quintana production. Like he sucks. He's terrible. But there are guys, and this is where the Mets can be aggressive at the trade deadline, right? Like there are guys that you can look at that have maybe a year or 2 left on their contracts that are pitchers or even bullpen arms or bats that can help improve this team. And I think that's where the Mets have to get creative. And I think we just got to trust David Stearns. We got to trust that he knows what he's doing. I think, again, just to caution Mets fans, this is the same GM that traded Josh Hader when the Brewers were in first place. He will make the moves that he feels are necessary to make this team better for the future. Bullpen, I think all the bullpen arms except for probably Edwin Diaz are available. Like, don't be surprised if he moves any of those guys. It's going to be really, really easy for the guys on the radio and guys like us to scream and yell because he's going to give us some things to talk about because there's going to be moves where you're like, what are they doing? This makes this team worse theoretically, but I think in the long run, it's going to end up being the right decision. Again, it's going to suck, but like Luis Severino is just not a part of future plans of this team. And I think you'll be able to stay afloat despite getting rid of those guys.
But why not keep Severino and sign him again next year?
Because I think there's no reason to. I think Luis Severino might not ever be better than what he is right now again. Like, he's not striking out guys. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like over the last 3 or 4 games, he has like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 strikeouts a game, and he's kind of been getting hit. Not that I think that he's bad by any means, but the ceiling on Luis Severino, it's not what we thought it was. It's not the Yankees Luis Severino. I still think Mets fans are trying to convince themselves that he can get back to that position. Also, at the end of the year, like he has never been given a qualifying offer, so the Mets could theoretically give that to him. And if he does sign a contract with someone else, they then get a draft pick. So that's kind of the conversation they're going to have with themselves, is whether or not that draft pick is more valuable or the prospects that they can get at the deadline will be more valuable. And based on the trade rumors that are going around, the trade scenarios that you see, the teams that could use it, like the Baltimore Orioles just lost Kyle Bradish, and that farm system is loaded. I would love to take 2 prospects from that farm system for a guy like Luis Severino. You have to make that trade every single time. It's just you're banking on a guy who's pitching way better than probably he should especially with the injury history. He might not even want to come back at the end of the year. Like, you don't know. I think it's one of those things where if Luis Severino was the make or break for this team in terms of being a good team or not, I think the Mets have bigger problems.
I want to name a player, and you're going to say yay or nay to if they're going to be part of the 2025 Mets.
Okay,
players.
2025 Mets. So not traded yet, but if they'll be there next year, I like that.
Next year, yeah. So maybe they get traded and they bring him back. Let's start with Pete Alonso.
Oh, come on.
Started right at the top. I honestly think he's gone. I don't think they're going to pay him or give him the contract that Boris is going to want and what he was going to want.
Boris really fucks everything up. Boris really fucks this whole entire situation up because he's convinced Pete Alonso that he's going to be the highest paid first baseman that's ever existed. And there's just no planet where that should happen. Pete's a good ball player. He's really good. He's a top 5, top 6 first baseman in baseball. But he can't get paid more than Freddie Freeman. He can't get paid more than Matt Olson. You just can't do that. The thing that I think Pete, I'm gonna go positive here. I think Pete is a Met. I think Pete is a Met next year. And the reason why is I know that contract got leaked that he declined. I think it was the 7 for $150 or whatever it was. I can understand why Pete declined it. I think the value-wise, they're in the same value. I think Pete just wants more years. It seems like Pete wants to stay in New York. It seems like he doesn't want to go anywhere else. And I think it's being twisted as he wants more money, which is possible because it's Scott Boras. But it seems like he's like, I want to sign one contract and I never want to leave. I want to play here until I'm 40 and I want to be taken care of. And I never want to have to deal with this free agency shit again because it sucks. So I think there's a world where the Mets get it done. The problem is going to be those years. I think the value-wise, money per year, they're in the same spot, but it's going to be tough to give a little pudgy first baseman 10 years so that he never has to go to free agency again. But I'm going to be positive. I'm going to say they get it done.
Listen, he looked very comfortable in that outfit he wore to the trip.
He did.
He looked like a Texas boy. He's from Florida. We know where his beliefs may align. And one of those states, you never know if a state of Florida or state of Texas calls.
The brain says he's traded. He's not there. The heart says he can't go. He can't leave.
Yeah, I think he can. So we'll see. Yeah. I think that's the talk. I had to start right there. Another intriguing one because his bat has turned around, yet he's incredibly frustrating to watch sometimes in the field. Is Starling Marte 1 year left on his deal? Is he a contract? I think he's owed $20 million next year. He heavily backloaded contract. Is he a contract that a team will take? Obviously, the Mets would have to eat some of it. Can the Mets get a return for him, or do you throw him out there for one more year? I mean, listen, he's hitting 282. He's at 356 OBP, or 331. Excuse me, 279, 331 OBP, but he looks cooked and right outside of his arm. He looked like he can't track balls down, a la the play in London. Starling Marte, 2025 Mets, yay or nay?
Yay, but only because nobody wants him. I think the Mets, if you can convince like a really stupid team that to take Starling Marte and his contract, oh my God, we'll take nothing back for him. Just take him. He's free. We'll take like your 27-year-old catcher in high A, whatever it is. You got to move that contract if you have the ability to. The problem is, I think everybody in baseball is a little bit smarter than that, unless he gets on such a tear. Like if Starling Marte hits that 300 average mark at some point, because he hits 360 until the trade deadline, maybe you could convince someone, but it's going to be almost impossible with that contract. And you mentioned it. He has been the worst defensive outfielder in all of baseball. It's not even close. Going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, and he's very Jekyll and Hyde because he'll have, he had a big RBI double last night. Like he'll get you hits.
Yeah, he'll
steal a base, automatically steal. It's amazing. If his effort on the base pass was in the right field, he'd be a much better player.
He'd be an all-star again. Yeah.
I mean, listen, when they got him, I was thrilled. I wanted him here a while, but I think sometimes players check out. I don't know if he's checked out, but he still could be hurt. His body, you just get older. He's in mid to late 30s now. Your body just catches up with you for a player like that. And when your body's, getting bumping and grinding at the club with the hookah going, that might have happened to Starling Marte. JD Martinez is an interesting name because you would automatically be like, nah, they're not going to bring him back. They have all these prospects. but he is a professional. And I think he was a big part of the team meeting. I think he says all the right things. He's a hitting machine. I love the story. He sets up his phone in the batting cage every day to watch what he's doing right. He is the kind of guy you really want and need in the clubhouse. So I honestly would love if they could bring him back on a 1-year deal. But what do you think happens with JD?
I think he's gone. I think he's traded. I agree with you. I'd love to keep him around. I'd love for him to be a part of this team, even next year, if he still wants to keep playing. Like at the way he's hitting, sure. I don't want to get rid of you. That's a DH that can play for another year for sure. But I think that he's going to actually get a pretty good haul back. I'm not going to say like any like crazy top prospect stuff, but I think you'll be able. I mean, look what we got for Tommy Pham. We ended up getting Jeremy Rodriguez, who's one of the young budding prospects out in the complex league for the Mets. If we can trade JD Martinez for a good haul back, I think they're going to make that move. That's got David Stearns written all over it. No reason to keep a 38-year-old DH around when realistically, I still think they want to give Brett Beatty a chance at third base, and Vientos will probably end up moving to DH, or if Pete Alonso gets traded, he's playing first.
We already lost a month of JD Martinez. I've wanted him for years.
I know.
To lose another 2 months of him. I mean, this is the most shortened stretch of a player we wanted for years that we barely got. It was a cock tease. It was a tease.
This is like almost. It's not, but it's almost the best case scenario. It's like we got to have him be amazing. We got to enjoy it. And then we get to turn him into somebody who's going to help us years from now. It's boring though. Nobody wants to hear that shit.
Yeah, I don't like the boring. Harrison Bader, I think it's a lock. He won't be here next year.
Get rid of him. I loved Harrison. He's been great. He plays awesome center field. But same thing. If you can get anything for this guy, move it immediately.
I loved Adam Wainwright in the broadcast because I already knew he's a player. He's out there on the city life. He's macking. He's got girls left and right all over him. I know multiple girls who've hit me up. They're like, "What's up with Harrison Bader?" I'm like, "I don't know. Why don't you slide in his DMs?" He's a nice Jewish boy. I know a few NJGs who want their NJB and they're looking to be Harry A. Bebe. And I love that Wainwright said, to the boys, he says, "Hi, I'm Harrison Bader." But to the girls, he goes, "Hi, I'm Harrison." It works. And I love that story. All right. Jeff McNeil is the other one. 2025.
Jeff McNeil will be back. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him. I think he'll be back.
Sean Manaea.
Nope. I think he's gone. I also think I don't even necessarily know if they trade him, but I don't think he's going to pick up the player option. I don't think the Mets are going to pay him multiple years.
And Severino Quintana, you already said they definitely won't be here next year.
Severino, I think there's no shot. Quintana, he's a free agent at the end of the year.
He'll be a free agent.
Yeah, there's no shot. He's back.
Yeah, no way you could bring him back.
Please, God, no.
What is the leash on Adam Ottavino? Like, I think everyone wants them to just cut Adam Ottavino, but they don't want to do that to a veteran like him. He's hit or miss. Like, you can never breathe comfortably when he pitches, but sometimes he'll strike out the side, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, like the other night, he went 2 innings. It was great. And you're like, he's back. And then you see him pitch like 5 days in a row. You're like, he has that confused look on his face when he comes off the mound, kind of the head scratch. And you're like, dude, I think he might be cooked. Like, it might be time to hang him up.
I said that he's cooked. And do they cut? Like, there's got to be a point this year where he's not on the Mets anymore, right?
The thing with him that makes it interesting, not even like necessarily about like being a veteran, is just like you do need bullpen arms, and he's just gonna pitch, and he's okay with pitching him, and you are paying him money, so you might as well just keep him around. But if it ever gets so bad where he really is like unpitchable, David Stearns will do the right thing.
Is this Mets team, is this win streak saying is fool's gold or the real deal? Are they fool's gold? This win streak, is it fooling us? The whole Grimace thing. Are they going to come back to the team that they were, or is this real? Like, have they turned a corner here, and are we going to see the Mets go on a playoff run?
I think it's more real than it's not. Because think about it, Lindor, he's hitting since moving to the leadoff spot. He has like one of the best FWARs in all of Major League Baseball, and that says something. He's been one of the most valuable players since that switch up. Brandon Nimmo seems to understand how to hit in the 2-hole. The 3-hole messed him up. It royally fucked that guy's brain up. Now he's in the 2-hole, looks comfortable, looks back. Pete Alonso looks comfortable in the 4 spot. JD Martinez is hitting well in the 3. Mark Vientos is hitting well. Francisco Alvarez is hitting well. I know these guys are going to have ebbs and flows. They're not going to hit well for the rest of the entire season. But it does feel like this offense at least is sticky, at least can be legitimate and can compete in games, where in past during this year, we were like, oh my God, this team is so terrible. Do we have any major league hitters? The big question is going to be pitching. It's going to come down to pitching. Do they have enough? Will they have enough? Will they move guys? That's where it really comes down to it. I think they have enough hitting to be a playoff team, but the pitching is kind of leveling off back to normal because we did get hot to start the year. So the tides are now evening. The hitting's up, the pitching's down. I think it's closer to real than it's not, but I'm not in the bandwagon yet of like, oh, baby, we're back. I'm just like, hey, we're playing good baseball. Let's keep it moving one game at a time.
And a week or two ago, we were talking about this being a dreadful summer. We were talking about the Mets, a ghost town in Queens.
Oh,
now
I think I was going to go.
Yeah, and I think Subway Series, especially if they win the series against the Cubs, Subway Series is going to have buzz next week. Mets Astros next weekend has some buzz, and maybe games in July have some buzz. And I think health is so critical to this team because, like I said, if Senga comes back, Mark, we're talking Senga was must see. Like it was Ghost Forkball Day. You had the K's and the Ghost Forkball K. The Athlete Locos did that whole thing. Like that was must see. Like if he comes back and you bring Christian Scott back up, you have Jose Budo, you have young arms, you have a couple of must see arms, and then maybe you get a reliever or two. You're cooking because, like, I agree. I think the offense is good and the impact Francisco Alvarez has. I mean, the record speaks for itself before last night, 18-1 in the last 19 games.
Yep.
Like, that's unheard of, that drastic of a difference. And when you look at, like, his stats at the box where you're like, oh, he's not hitting that great. Well, it's his defense. It's his presence. It's his smile. It's everything, his aura he brings to the table. Just like I said with Iglesias, like, the exclusive, OMG, playing in the clubhouse. Like, Francisco Alvarez has that it factor, and that's one position you look at when you look around the diamond of this team that you hope he's their guy for the next decade plus, and he makes such a drastic difference, and it is a joy to watch because, you know, we've seen a couple franchise catchers here, Mike Piazza obviously being the guy, and since Piazza left, we've been looking for that cement him in everyday catcher, and they haven't had it, and they might have it now for a very long time.
Yeah, the closest thing was Paul LaDuca in that little 2-year run that we had. Otherwise, it's been like Brian Schneider, Josh Thole.
Let's keep going through irrelevant Mets catchers.
Kevin Plawecki.
Ramon Castro. Let's go back and forth. Ramon Castro, go.
Omir Santos.
Oh, I was at the game in Boston. I think he had that big
legendary
hit in Boston. Damn, now we Josh Thole. Who else? Kevin Plawecki, you said.
Yep, Plawecki's a good.
I'm trying to think of other obscure ones.
Oh, I've got some names. Mike Nikias.
You have a better memory than me. Mike Nikias, that's a good one.
Rene Rivera.
Rene, I liked him.
Oh yeah, I loved John Buck. Remember John Buck?
John Buck. He was here for like 1 year.
Rod Barajas for like a couple weeks.
Yes. Like we're talking about guys who sucked, but they were fun. Like they were 200 hitters, but they hit a home run in April to win a game. We're like, he's a Met forever.
Yes.
So like we need the Met forever catcher. And I think he can be the guy. What's interesting though, I wonder if the hand is still bothering him a bit because the power has not been there. Obviously, the big 2-run hit the other night. That game the other night was one of the games of the year. I mean, the London game's up there. The other night was up there, down 6-2, chipping away. Alvarez the hit, go ahead hit by Alonso the night. Like that was one of the, when we look at the ultimate classics, that'll be the ultimate classic of the 2024 season. But the power's not there yet. Is that a concern for you with Alvarez? Is that going to come around here?
Yeah, I mean, the power's going to come. I'm not concerned. I would love to see it happen sooner. I think he only has like 6 extra base hits on the season, but it's just going to take some time. If you look at the exit velos, he has some of the best in Major League Baseball. So it's just a thing of him getting the ball, getting around on it, putting the ball in the air, hitting the ball out of the park. And part of it's playing in Citi Field. Not really that easy to hit a home run in, but I'm not worried. Like I'm almost excited because I know it's coming. I guarantee it comes. So I'm like, when it does, holy shit, we're gonna have a player on our hands. Because even without the power, I love this guy.
Yeah, he's such a joy and brings a smile to all our faces. The Mets are 35-38, 1 game back of the wild card. The Cubs this weekend in Chicago. Before we wrap up, Subway Series. Now, I've gone to the Subway Series every year since 2000. You know, I have my father-son opening day tradition I do with my dad every year since 03. And the COVID year, you don't count, but we were there in cardboard cutout form, so you could count it because our cutouts were somewhere in the crowd. But Subway Series, I absolutely love it because, you know, I grew up and was picked on in general, but by Yankee fans, Yankee fans picking on me. So I think there's just an aura about it. I absolutely hate that it's 2 games and they do it in the middle of the week. It used to be 3-3 and it was always on the weekend. Even if it was during the week, like make it 3-3. Like this is an actual rivalry. And some people will disagree with me. They don't think of it a rivalry. 2000, the Yankees broke my heart. That was the first full year I was a fan. The Yankees won the World Series, and I said, this is war. And for a year, because my dad was in 98, I rooted for the Yankees before I moved to Connecticut. And then I switched 99. And then 2000 was the first year I fully invested spring training to enter the playoffs. And they made the World Series. I'm like, life's going to be great. Life sucked after that. They were terrible.
That went downhill.
But it started great. But the start of that greatness, including the sinking down, was that World Series because it was epic. Tickets were too expensive to go. I was 9 years old. Mets, Yankees, fighting friends. We got pizza and soda pop watch parties. Like, it was fun. And that's when the rivalry began. So I love this series. What are your thoughts on Subway Series? And do you consider it a rivalry?
Yeah, love the series. I consider a rivalry, but in a different way than like we consider the Braves or the Phillies or the Yankees consider the Red Sox or maybe now the Orioles. Like, it's not a rivalry of necessarily these two teams. It is a rivalry of fan bases. There's no other team like the White Sox and the Cubs. Come on, please. That's not the same. Like, there's no other teams that literally play 5, 6, 7, 10 miles away from each other like this. And the fan bases are both so ravenous and they both just like go crazy hard for their team. The vibes of the Subway Series are unmatched. That's what makes it a rivalry is the fans. The teams themselves, it doesn't matter. These teams actually have no impact on each other whatsoever. But for fans, it means a lot. And I think that's why it's important. I love the Subway Series every year. I'm a prolific Yankee hater, hated that team ever since I can remember my first memory. Similar to you, my dad gave me the choice. He was like, 2000, Mets, Yankees. You got to pick, but whatever you pick, that's what we're rocking with forever. Like, we're not changing. I'll change for you, but we're not changing if you go to the Mets or if you go to the Yankees. I stuck with the Mets, similar to you. Then you were like, oh, what a mistake this has been. But you know what? That's also why I hate the Yankees, because fuck them. They get everything so easy. We got to work hard for our memories, for our victories, for our special moments. And I think that's what makes it great. It's just, it's blue collar versus white collar. It's little brother versus big brother. Like, this is awesome.
In the words of the great Donna Summer, works hard for the money. She works hard for the money, but we'll remix it to Mets fans. We work hard for the money.
Oh yeah.
And we've been through it all. Yeah. I can't wait for Subway Series. Are you going to be going to both or?
Yeah, I will be going to at least one. I've got a friend flying in from Houston who's a Yankee fan. So we're going to be going to one night. I think we're trying to go to the Garrett Cole game because you got to see Garrett Cole pitch. You have the opportunity. The Mets ticket prices actually went up quite a bit. I was surprised. I thought we were going to be able to sneak in for cheap, but I guess this win streak and fucking Grimace really jacked those prices up.
Before Grimace, yeah, they were down. It was like $50. It got down. I saw on TickPick $56 maybe. I'm probably just gonna get a day of like I usually do. But
best move.
You never know. Like I might get this 5 p.m. Someone will be like, "Here's tickets." I'm like, "All right, thank God I waited." So I always try to wait because when I don't, then I get offered like the Memorial Day game. I was given 8 tickets. And thank God it was a rain out because I got 8 vouchers. So people are wondering how last weekend I was first row behind the dugout Sunday or Saturday, second row behind the dugout Friday. The vouchers allowed me to get any seat in the building. So I got the $485 seats for free that include free unlimited food and drinks, which is why I shared with random man Gerald at Clover Club a cinnamon cannoli donut for Father's Day weekend. Shout out to Gerald. He enjoyed a donut with me, and I was feeding families that night with my free unlimited food. I shouldn't say that on here because the Mets will revoke a ticket, but I was getting some people some food, so I made use of that. So we can't wait. Tuesday, Wednesday, the Let's Go Mets versus Let's Go Yankees or Let's Go Yankees, Yankees suck chant going back and forth is always a vibe. And let's hope they win this series. You want to go on the Subway Series with Buzz. I think Grimace created that, but if you get swept here by the Cubs, it's like, boy, here we go again. So beat the Cubs, big series, 2 wild card teams fighting, going at it at Wrigley, historic park. And then the Astros next weekend should be a good series. A team that's also fighting to get back in the race. That AL wildcard race, Mark, is like the opposite of the NL. NL's like teams duking it out, where AL, it's like everyone's 3 or 4 out. They're not even close.
No.
So it's going to be a fun few weeks. Giraffe Neck Marc on YouTube, the Mets Up podcast. What else you got going on?
That's it. I just talk a lot about baseball. Giraffe Neck Marc and Mets Up. I'm sick in the head. I care about one thing and one thing only, and that's baseball.
And I go to Mark for YouTube advice.
Yes.
Thumbnail advice. You're like, bro, don't put this thumbnail up. This looks terrible. Yeah, I am still learning as I grow as an adult here. But Mark, I'll see you around. Thanks for coming on Mets Magic.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets. That's the motto. He's Giraffe Neck Marc. Subscribe to his YouTube and follow him on X and the Mets Up podcast. Mets Cubs Subway Series. We'll be back next week after the Subway Series next Thursday. Can't wait. Hope the Mets are, maybe 500 by then. That would be kind of fun. Thank you to Grimace for everything, and thanks to you for listening and watching the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. Smash that thumbs up. Comment below. Sick Pod Mets, Jake Brown Radio. We'll talk to you next Thursday, and as always, let's go Mets.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Mets Magic on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.